What's up, guys? So, I want to talk about tuning tonight, and not about the hardcore tuning that most of your SQ guys are into, but basic tuning. So, if you're new to car audio and you've got your first system or you're planning on getting one, I want to tell you a few tricks to get you started in the world. Get your system up and running. Basic tuning so that it sounds pretty good and you don't damage any equipment right off the bat. So, the first thing is to understand crossovers. And most of your better drivers will come with a crossover range that driver can perform in. For example, most tweeters uh, prefer something like a low pass crossover of around 3000 hertz, 3500, something like that. Usually, if you don't have any clue where to cross it over, I would cross it over higher than that at 4000 hertz. Because most of what a tweeter is going to play is going to be way up high anyway. And if you cross over too low without knowing it, you can damage the tweeter or completely destroy it. That mylar or silk dome doesn't take a whole lot of punishment before it just disintegrates. So, for a good safe point, if you don't know any better, for sure, cross it over at 4000 hertz on the low pass and then nothing at the high pass. Now, when you're mid range drivers, usually, if you are putting together a budget system, most likely you've got a two-way driver setup. And if you're not running a passive crossover to handle that, then you've got to make that tweeter and that mid driver meet in the middle. If it's a two-way setup and you don't have a subwoofer, that driver is probably going to cross over around 80 hertz. And so your low pass on it is going to be around 80 hertz. And then at the top, the high pass crossover needs to match your tweeter so that your tweeter can pick up where the mid range leaves off. So you would set it for 4000 hertz also. And for your crossover type, I always go with Butterworth. I just prefer that particular curve. So Butterworth crossovers on your mid driver, crossing it over at 80 hertz with a 24 dB roll off, and the 4000 hertz on the top with a 24 dB roll off. This is settings in the DSP. And then your tweeter with a 24 dB roll off at 4000 hertz on a Butterworth crossover and nothing at the top. Then your subwoofer, if you're again running a system that's very basic, you would cross it over at say 20 or 25 hertz on the low pass, maybe even 30 hertz at the low pass. And then with a 24 dB roll off again. And on the high pass or the low, yeah, let me see. Yeah, the high pass would be 80 hertz at a 24 dB roll off on a Butterworth crossover. Now, these are basic setup, basic crossover points. And I'm not going to dig too deep into them, but the main things you want to do is protect your tweeter by crossing it over pretty high if you don't know. 4000 hertz is a good place. And your subwoofer, you want to protect it from playing extremely low by crossing it over at, say, 30 hertz with a 24 dB roll off. So it doesn't play anything below 30 hertz. Well, it will still play below, but as it's going lower, it's going to be losing volume output. So it won't damage the subwoofer. All the rest of the crossover points are mostly going to be for sound quality, not necessarily for keeping the driver okay. You don't want to play your mid range too low either, for the same reason as a sub. because it'll start to bottom out. And you'll know it's bottoming out because you'll hear when the bass note hits or a drum hits, you'll actually hear another sound. That's the driver actually reaching its mechanical limit and either completely stretching out the surround and coming to the end of its travel, or the voice coil itself or the spider is impacting inside there. So you'll hear it. It's a distinct sound. You play a drums and you hear kind of a pop in the driver. That means you need to raise that that low pass up some. Go from 80 hertz to 100 hertz or 110. But this is not a class per se on setting crossovers. What I'm going to talk about now is the tuning part. This is the part that people are going to be interested in hearing. So the first thing I do myself on a basic tune is once I get the crossover set, I turn off all the speakers except for my subwoofer. And then I get a tone generator. You can download this app, a tone generator app. And I set that sucker down to about 30 hertz. And I turn the volume up, get it playing that, right? And then I keep raising the frequency until I hear where that subwoofer starts to get quieter. It'll be peaking, then it'll just kind of fall on its face. And in my case, it's around 60 hertz in my Tahoe. So at that point, that's where your crossover is. So I'll cross it over at 50 hertz with a 24 dB roll off, and then the sub will roll off and fall off at that point. This giving me my initial first part of my frequency range. Then on my upfront sub, which plays higher, I'll start it out around 30 hertz, and I'll run it up, and keep running it up, and find a spot where it falls off. And it falls off right about 100 hertz. Well, pretty close. So I'll cross it over at like 90 with a 24 dB roll off. And then I'll go back and cross it over at 50 hertz on the bottom with a 24 dB roll off to match up with the big sub, so that there's a nice smooth transition from one frequency to the next. Then you go to the doors and you run that number up. You run that frequency sweeper up until the odds are your mids are not going to die until like way up there. Okay, like way up there. But if you listen to the volume and listen to the sound, you'll hear a point where they just start to kind of get shrill. Some of the smoothness goes away. It's not a good clean tone. You'll hear some extra sounds in it. It's hard to explain, but if you're listening for it, you will hear it. Now you're going to want to turn that volume down quite a bit when you go to getting up into 1,000 hertz and higher, because that sound will blow your brain apart. But keep listening to it until you hear it start to break up and start to make a weird effect coming from it. And like I said, I can't explain what it is, but you'll hear it if you're listening for it. When that happens, back up a little bit and put your crossover point in there. Don't make that driver play that. And say it's 5,000, hertz. So then you move on. In my case, I move on to my A pillars. Now my A pillars have a 3.5 inch mid and a tweeter on a passive crossover network together. So I set both of those together as one driver. And in this case, I would set them for 5,000 hertz and up, because I'm playing the doors up to that point and I lock it in. The key thing I'm telling you is you have to listen to your drivers in your vehicle, not just on paper, but in your vehicle. You need to listen to the driver and hear in your vehicle and your enclosures and your doors and all that, Hear where it produces sound well. Listen to the driver. It will tell you. So it'll tell you where its bottom is falling off. It'll tell you where it's overextending itself. It'll tell you where it stops really sounding good, and you give it a range inside that space. You bring the heart of your speakers in to meet those edges so that you get a nice constant flow of all of the representation of the whole spectrum of music from the lineup of drivers that you're currently using, whether it be a two-way, a three-way, or just a coaxial, whatever the case may be. And once you've established this, now you've got your crossover set to begin with to keep from damaging things. And now you've listened to the tone sweeps. You've found the sweet spots where the drivers can be crossed over at. You've also looked at the factory specs and saw where they really don't need to be. So you've avoided crossing them over too low. It's always too low. High is not a problem. Low is. You don't want to cross over any driver lower than its FS. It's going to get really violent and it's going to break things. So you know you're safe. You know you're within the sweet spot. And the next part is going to be time alignment. Time alignment's really easy. Just sit in your driver's seat with your tape measure. I don't have one. Yes, I do, actually. Oh, look at that. Wow. Right here in my hand. So, so you sit in your driver's seat, grab your tape measure, and then run it over to the run it over to the closest speaker in your system. It's usually going to be your A pillar or sail tweeter or whatever is over here. If it's not, it's down in the door. Just find the closest one and put that into that tape measure right at the dust cap in the center of that driver. Okay, and then measure up here to your head to where it comes to your ear. With you sitting nice and straight, I got this thing in the way, but measure right here. And you measure it with your finger, right? Get it stretched out there. Do it like this, whatever you need to do. Get it measured, and then look at your measurement. All right, and that first measurement, whatever it is, let's say it's 20 inches. Write that down. Okay. Now measure the next closest driver. Boom. Down here in the door. It's 40 inches. Okay, we're just making up numbers. You write that down. Go over here to the next one. Just pick the next closest each time. Which it should be pretty obvious that this one is closer than this one, right? Go through that list. When you get done getting all those measurements, that very first measurement, change it to 0, okay? And then take 20 off of everything else. You take that first measurement and subtract it from all the other measurements that you did. You follow me? Yeah, and you make that one a 0. And the reason we're doing that is because we don't need to delay the shortest signal. It's going to be the one we base everything else off of. It's automatically going to take 20 inches to get here. We just need to delay the others so that they all get there at the same time. So take your first measurement, your shortest measurement, change it to 0, and take the number that it used to be and subtract it from all the other measurements. Write it down beside where you wrote the other ones down. Then go in there and your time alignment and set it to inches. Do this channel at 0, leave it at 0. This channel would be 20 because it was 40. We took 20 away, and so forth and so on. When you get all of that done, now you have your time alignment set. And you need your subwoofer. Hey, you have to do this thing where you stick the tape way back there and get it. And you look back here and you go, okay, that's pretty close. And look at your tape and see what it is. Tip, it's usually going to be pretty close to the same number as the speaker in the passenger door all the way at the bottom. I know it's crazy, but it probably will be pretty close. So even in my Tahoe, that's about the same number always. Uh, so you got your frequencies, you got your time alignment. Now, here's the really cool part. So on this part, you need to have a basic tablet. Nothing fancy, just a tablet or a phone, something, and you download an RTA app. Find an app that has an RTA on it. That's the thing that looks like the little equalizer, the lines bouncing up and down. Preferably one that's got at least 30 of those lines bouncing up and down. Okay. This is how I do it. Again, this is not perfect. This is just rough. Now you go in your DSP and turn off all your speakers except for the one. Let's go back to number one over here. Set your RTA up to where it's got the little lines going. Set it to where they're kind of slow. They're not going, they're just kind of like this, right? And if you can, set it to where it has 30 bands. Sometimes you can shrink it up and you can make the lines really big and fat and make them really skinny. Set it to where there's like 30 of them. It's something to that effect. This will make it a lot easier to tune. So get that set up. You got the little lines doing their thing. Now turn on some peak noise. And if you need to download it, download it. You can find it on YouTube. You know, you can whatever. Pink noise. You can also get a noise generator too, but you're going to have to run two things. If you can get it to work, that's fine. The point is, get some pink noise. Play it in the background. Now, whenever that pink noise starts, you're going to see the meters jump up. You're going to have some bottom end noise. It's always going to be there. So you got to ignore this down here up to like 100 hertz and down. It's just going to be a whoosh that kind of comes up on the side of your RTA. That's your vehicle, the air conditioning noises, and other things around you that are making all that noise. Ignore that swell from 100 hertz and down. It doesn't matter. What you will see is a curve that'll come across. You get your 100 hertz swell, then you're going to have like a whoop. Okay. You're going to have a bunch of little lines like little fingers, right? What you want to see is something that looks like this. Nice, smooth. What you don't want to see is something that looks like this with a big old notch in it, you know, or like this with a big old shelf. This is bad. This is good. Okay. So what you're looking for on this, when you get the volume cranked up enough to where it kind of eats that background noise and kind of gives you a good representation of the music, get that noise pumped up to that one speaker, crank it up enough to where you really get a good representation, and look at your lines. And you want to see them kind of looking like that. You should see a curve that kind of goes over and comes back down. Looks like this. You should see a hump because on a tweeter it's gonna go up and then it should just kind of continue across. But on the mid it's going to go up and back down. Same thing on everything else. You want to see a nice pretty shape with no big gaping holes in it. If you have a big gaping hole, so now you've got your DSP EQ or you've got got your DSP EQ pulled up. And you got the big gaping hole. So you got a bunch of lines and then one of them is broke, right? Looks like that. You don't want that. So what your thought is going to be is to grab this one line on your EQ and pull it up. And you can do that a little bit, only about 5 dB. You don't want to go any higher than that or you're going to come into clipping that one particular band. What you want to do is adjust all these other guys. You want to bring them down. So you want to roll them down a little bit, roll them down, roll him down until you kind of get them like that. And now they're kind of flattened out. You can also bring the short one up about 5 dB or less. To work them together, you want to get a nice smooth-ish thing. Now, you don't have to make a dead flat arc. You just don't want anything peaking real hard above other things or dropping real hard below things. And be prepared, by the way, for your driver's side mids to have a hard time getting a good 200 hertz frequency. It's always difficult. There's always a lost. That 200 hertz on the driver's side is always really hard to get a hold of. So if you've got a big gap in there around 200 hertz on this driver's side door, yeah, that's normal. Now, once you get done with that one speaker, you shut it off and do this other speaker. Same thing. Then shut it off and do this speaker. Do each individual driver or each channel like this. This will give you a balanced output of tone, a balanced tonal output. You're also getting good time alignment. You got your crossover points set. Everything is happy. Now, when you want to, this is a good stopping point for most people. This will give you a good whole car tune because wherever you have the RTA tablet phone, that's going to be the sweet spot. If you set it over here on the armrest or somewhere, if you don't have something that kind of puts it up in this range, get you a pillow or a box or something and set it in here somewhere over here between the seats to try to get the tablet that you're using up in this range. You don't want it up on the dash by the windshield. That's going to screw it up. You don't want it down on the console, way down there, by the gear shifter. That's going to screw it up. You want it to be more or less where your head and your passenger's head is going to be. In that general area in the middle of the cabin on just on a surface. So some kind of box or bag, pillow, whatever, get it set right up in this area in the center. Now, if you want to tune the same setup to the driver's position, instead move it right over here in front of your face, like get it right here. And so you look in here and you look at your thing, you make your adjustments and you look at the thing, make sure you're not covering up the little microphones. So hold it with your fingers. Don't have any props, man. So you got your thing, hold the corners with your fingers and just hold it right up here close to your head. Don't breathe on it and watch it quietly. Watch for your peaks and adjust them. Wherever you have this microphone for this device is where it's sampling the sound. And it's not going to be perfect. There's a reason why you have calibrated microphones for this. But it's going to be way better than most people think. The microphone that's in this device is actually calibrated for the device. And it literally is calibrated because there is a DSP in here. Its job is to pick up audio from your voice and take away noise in the background. That's why I'm able to talk to you right now with the air conditioner going over here, with random things happening in the room. I mean, look at this. I'm going to talk to you. I got this bag of chips right here. I'm going to mess with this. Do you even hear that? I don't know. You probably hear it a little bit, but the noise canceling stops that. And that computer that's controlling all that, that's a smart computer. It uses a calibrated mic. It has to be calibrated for the device for the software to be able to noise cancel. So the mic in this is pretty good. It's pretty good. Same thing with the tablet. Anything that has noise canceling feature, which is most things today, so it does a pretty good job. Now, if you're wanting to do, like I said, for yourself, a single seat, a driver's seat, do the thing where you have it right here. If not, then set it over here to the middle. So it kind of gives both the passenger and the driver's perspective. The point is, this will allow you to make the tonal corrections to have the perfect sweep of pitches and music across the spectrum. Nothing's going to be ridiculously louder than anything else. Now, when you get done with this function, you've done each individual driver, right? The next trick is to tune it to suit yourself. Now, what I personally like to do is I use my DSP to get to this point, right? And then I use the EQ all the while, mind you. I've had my EQ and all the stuff in my stereo flat, 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 flat. So once I get done getting everything leveled out, like I explained, I then go to my stereo and I use the EQ that controls the whole system to make some minor adjustments in the overall sound. So every driver that's going to get it's going to get a job to do something a little more, a little less. The whole system comes in tunes to my personal taste. So I've hopefully helped you guys understand basic tuning, some tricks that I use whenever I tune, a quick and dirty tune, and you'd be surprised just how good you can get it to sound by using these tricks. If you guys found this helpful, please hit the subscribe button and by all means, comment and share. Share the love with the world. Throw me out there on Facebook and uh, whatever other stuff you guys are doing because I want to reach as many people as I can and help debunk a lot of the myths and a lot of the bad information out there. It's not hard to learn this stuff. You just have to know the basics. And once you understand the basics, the fruit will grow from your tree over time. You will get better and better at it. And I know this is a long video, but this is a complex subject. And I didn't want to try to chop it up in a little tiny little 10-minute shot. I wanted to be able to get the whole thing out there. And this will be going up on the podcast. And I appreciate you podcast people so much. And I appreciate my YouTube people as well. You guys, thank you and have a nice day.